For trying to get right to work. You guys have done a good job. All right, so when we have these complex numbers that we're dividing, we can't have an I in the denominator. So we've got that 2 plus 3I in the bottom. Okay, so what we have to use is what we call the conjugate to get rid of that I in the bottom. Okay, remember I is the square root of -1. You're not allowed to have radicals in denominators, so you're not allowed to have i's in denominators. So the conjugate of 2 plus 3i is 2 minus 3i. So you multiply the top and the bottom by that conjugate. Okay, in the top, I'm just distributing 4i times 2 and 4i times -3i is -12i squared. Okay, on the bottom, I'll make it bigger. It's hard to see.
Doesn't that change to plus 12?
It will change to plus 12, yeah. All right, so here I'm foiling, but what's going to always happen with the outside and the inside when we do this? They're going to cancel. So all you really have to do when you have conjugates is square the first term, which is 4, and square the last term, which is just 9. You don't have to worry about the i's. It's going to go away, all right? And it's addition. Always addition when you do conjugates. Square the first term and the last term and add them, okay? So like Hunter said, remember, I squared is -1, so that minus 12i squared becomes a positive 12, okay? So then our final answer is, I like to write it in the proper form, but if you didn't, it's okay. We usually put the real part in the front and the imaginary part in the back. And then what's 4 plus 9? 13. So now it's done. Questions? Okay. Number 10. When we had, when we had fractions like this, we want to get rid of the fractions ASAP, right? So what you do is you look to see what the common denominator is. So what's the common denominator between 3 and 2? 6. If you multiply the whole equation, everything in the equation by 6, you won't have any fractions. Again, when you multiply 6 times a fraction, you just multiply 6 times the 2. You don't multiply it by the 3. Because remember, it's like 6 over 1, right? So it's like 6 times 2 and 1 times 3. So 6 times 2 is 12, divided by 3 is 4. So that becomes 4x. And then 6 times -5 is -30. And then 6 times a half, you guys know what half of 6 is, right? And then 6 times -3. So once you do that, no more fractions. That's why we do that. And then we just get the x's together and solve. So I'm going to take the 3x to the left, and I'm going to take the 30 over to the right. So I'm basically doing 2 steps at once here. So what's 4x minus 3x? X. And then what's -18 plus 30? -18 plus 30. 12. Okay. So you should have gotten 12. Questions? Yeah. You can still do it that way. You still can have 12, yeah. I mean, you can still do it with the fractions, but it's easier if you get rid of the fractions right away. Right, Hunter? Carly, when we have absolute values, what's that tell us?
It means we have one problem the same and the other side's a negative. Right?
Yeah, we have 2 problems. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, some of you forgot that there's 2 problems here when it's absolute value. Because remember, absolute value means how far from 0 you are. Okay, so there's 2 spots that are 10 away from 0, right?
Yeah.
You have negative 10 and the positive 10. So you have 2x plus 6 equals 10, or 2x plus 6 equals negative 10. The only thing that changes is the 10 to a negative. Okay? And then I just do those two problems. Okay? And I'm going to subtract 6, divide by 2. So one answer is 2. And here you're going to subtract 6 again, and divide by 2 again, and get negative 8. Oops. All right, so remember, some of you just forgot there were two problems there. All right, so on the exam, or maybe on your little note card you're allowed to have, right, front and back, remind yourself, 2 answers for number 11. 2 problems. Okay? All right, number 12, it said to solve it. It didn't tell you how to solve it, so you can solve it whatever you like the best. But this one's easy to factor. There's no GCF, but A is 1 for this trinomial. So you can go right to your 2 sets of parentheses, because the only way to get x squared is x times x. And then we're looking for what times what is negative 24, but added is a positive 2, which is what? Positive 6 and a negative 4. And some of you just stopped there yesterday. We went over it, maybe if I remember to check that one when you showed me. But remember, this equals 0. So what are my solutions? What values of x equals 0? So we're supposed to do this. Most of you could tell me the answers without doing this part, which is fine. But just remember to tell me what the answers are. This one would be negative 6, and this one would be positive 4. All right, there's 2 solutions to this. Okay? This one we're supposed to solve by completing the square. When we complete the square is when we do the plus blank stuff. I have to move the c value, that 5, to the other side. How do I move it over? Subtract the 5. And then you add your blanks to both sides. All right? Remember the blank? You might want to write this on your note card. Is the b value divided by 2 squared. So what's 4 divided by 2? 2, and what's 2 squared? 4. Okay? When we complete the square, we turn the trinomial into one of those special trinomials that you can factor to look like this. Okay? You just take the square root of the x squared and the square root of the 4. Whatever's in front of the b. So this was plus. And over here, you just do the math. It's negative 1. Now, some of you stopped there. Remember, we're solving this. We're trying to find what x equals, right? So I have to take the square root of both sides now. So what's the square root of x plus 2 squared? X plus 2, right? And we all know the square root of negative 1 is what? I. What symbol do I have to remember for this? Plus or minus. At that step, you're supposed to remember that plus or minus. And then finish up by subtracting the 2. So it's negative 2 plus or minus I. Okay? So that's solving a quadratic equation by completing the square. Question? All right. Number 14, we're supposed to use the quadratic formula. All right? So this you might want to write on your card. So remember, it's negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. All right? So put that on your note card so you got it right. Usually if you guys miss this, you just forget the square for the b underneath. Or sometimes you'll put just b instead of negative b. Or sometimes you put the square out here with that b. All right? So just little mistakes. So have it written down so you have the right one. So what's my a value? 3. What's my b value? Negative 5. So negative b plus or minus. Where some of you make a mistake also is you don't put your negative 5 here in parentheses and you square negative 5 and your calculator says negative 25. Remember, a negative times a negative is always positive. So whenever you square a number, it's always a positive answer. Minus 4. A was 3 and C was 4 over 2 times A. All right, so again, you don't have to put x's with these or x squareds with the a and stuff. It's just the coefficients, just the numbers in front. Some people still want to put where the b is, put 5x, and where the a is, put 3x squared. You don't need to do that. It's just the numbers. Okay? So then I get 5, because 2 negatives. I get 6 on the bottom, and then let's figure what that is. All right, so again, like I was saying, this is positive 25. And then negative 4 times 3 is negative 12, and negative 12 times 4 is a negative 48. When I do that, that's a negative 23 when I go 25 minus 48. So I have to simplify my radical. How do I simplify it? Well, if I try to do a factor tree, what are the factors of 22? 1 and 23, so that doesn't help. But what about that negative? You got to take the I out, right? So don't forget to pull the I out and make it positive 23. But that's all you can do for that. So far, so good. Any questions? We remembering some of this, hopefully? All right, just got 2 more to do for today. You guys, like I said, you guys have done a good job at this so far. All right, so here's another one. It's just got x to the 4th instead of x squared. All right, but look, I got an x to the 4th, an x to the 3rd, and an x squared. Yeah, I can factor out an x squared, right? It's a GCF. We can factor this. This factor is pretty easy. So this is x squared. And then x to the 4th divided by x squared is x squared. Negative 4x to the 3rd divided by x squared is negative 4x. And negative 21x squared divided by x squared is negative 21. Well, that's one of those easy trinomials again. What are the factors of negative 21 that add up to negative 4? Right, negative 7 and positive 3, right? Okay, so here's, and a lot of you got to this point yesterday, but again, didn't finish. We got 3 answers this time. All right, you got to set x squared equal to 0, x minus 7 equal to 0, and x plus 3. All 3 factors. So however many factors you get, you should set them equal to 0. Okay, to find all your answers. Well, you guys all know this one's what? Negative 3. And this one is 7. Now what's that?
0.
Yeah, that's just 0. If I take the square root of 0, square root of both sides, the square root of 0 is 0. So 0 is one of our answers for that. Okay? So, write yourself a note. Factor number 15. Factor number, what was it, 12 was the other one we factored? Factor 12. Complete the square, it tells you there. Quadratic formula tells you there. And then we're factoring again. Now, 16, we got a fraction equal to a fraction. What do we call that when you have proportion? Yeah. When you have two fractions equal, that's a proportion. So the easiest way to solve these is to cross multiply. Okay? So that's 7 times x plus 2 equals 4 times x minus 4. Cross products are equal in the proportion. So then I just distribute my 7 and my 4. Okay? So I'm going to subtract 4x to get it with the 7x. I'm going to subtract 14 to get it with the 16. Thank you. 7x minus 4x is 3x. And those cancel. And those cancel. Negative 16 and a negative 14 is a negative 30. And we get negative 10. Now, on these, we should always check, since there's an x in the bottom, make sure I don't get 0 when I substitute negative 10. Do I get a 0 in either denominator? No, so it's a good answer. If I would have gotten a negative 2 or a positive 4, then that's not a good answer. Okay? Questions?
What do we have to plug back into the answer?
Whatever you get, plug it back into the denominator, just to make sure you don't have one that you'll have to say no solution on. All right? So good job the last few days. All right? Just relax the rest of the day. Tomorrow, or not tomorrow, but Monday, we'll do the next half of the back side, okay? Yeah. Yeah.
For sure.
What? Good job. I'm well aware what you said. Somebody say yoga.
After Ashley gets back.
Great. 1, 2, and 3. Yeah.
Somebody say yoga. What is this? Oh, it's from